Hello and welcome to Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton in Southern California, just outside LA in Pasadena. And today's podcast is with a man who's been on Zestology a few times actually, but it's slightly different today. Dave Asprey, the man who invented biohacking. I think he actually came up with the term, and he also invented bulletproof coffee, which you may have heard about once or twice on this podcast. Now, the reason today's podcast is slightly different is because, it's kind of like a co-production along with Balance Magazine. They're fantastic free magazine that's handed out on the tube all over London. If you don't live in London, you will be able to read as well as listen to this podcast and this interview at balance.media. But the reason that it's different is it's a co-production specifically going back to the future, because Balance Magazine's November episode is on Back to the Future and future ways in which we might be able to optimize our health, well-being, body and mind, lifestyle, diet and everything else. Dave's kind of the perfect person to ask, because of everybody that I've ever met in my life, nobody does more crazy stuff and tries out more stuff than Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey tries it all, and he's here to tell you what works. Some of the stuff you'll hear in this podcast will cost a lot of money right now, but it won't in a few years' time. Some of this stuff you can do straight away, and you are going back to the future in the way that you optimize your health. So it's time for half an hour of biohacking and wellness and going back to the future with Balance Magazine and Zestology and Dave Asprey. Dave, how you doing?
I am doing so well. I've been doing all sorts of stuff at the Bulletproof Conference to keep my energy really high. So even though it's super intense, almost 3,000 people here, lots of hugs and selfies, I'm feeling great.
Well, this is... We've spoken a few times before on Zestology, haven't we? But this is a co-production this time for Zestology and for Balance Magazine.
That's awesome.
And their November issue is called Back to the Future. So we thought it'd be really great to chat to you. And I thought the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, we did an interview in January, and you look quite different to how you did in January. You're more ripped, you're toned, you look younger. What's been going on?
One of the things you can do to become more accountable to yourself is, if you have a big goal, you put it out there. So I told the world that I'm planning to live to at least 180 years old, and that made me really up my anti-aging game. So I've been doing this biohacking stuff, and I learned a lot. When you write a science book like Headstrong, it makes you synthesize new ideas and you just get new knowledge, but it also makes you realize how important it is. So I started taking my own advice even more seriously, and I've using huge amounts of polyphenols, which are these plant compounds that signal your cells to get stronger. So what I've done is systematically gone through and made it so the cells in my body make energy like a young person. And when you can do that, it actually regenerates you. And yes, I've done stem cells and I've done all kinds of stuff that I write about on the blog, but the idea is it's working. And I'm at the lowest body fat I've been probably since I was, actually probably my life. I'm really surprised. I'm about 12.
Looking at your guns with some envy.
And I don't work out a lot. I mean, I do a machine that doesn't use gravity, a computer-driven feedback thing, about once a week. And I do the bulletproof whole body vibration usually when I'm on the phone. I'm not a heavy workout guy, but I'm looking better than I have. I'm amazed and pleased, and my goal is to keep getting younger.
Yeah, living to 180. I've obviously heard you say that before, and I think I quite like that as well. Let's delve into some of the things that you just mentioned there. And I'm thinking specifically for the 1 million Londoners who pick up Balance Magazine. Stem cells is something that I've heard you speak about quite a bit before. Is this realistic for the vast majority of people? And is this part of the reason that you actually genuinely look younger? And we're going to take a couple of photos and videos so people can actually see the difference between January and now.
Well, 25 years ago, if I had told you that people living in tribes in Africa would have cell phones, we would have had the same conversation. Is this realistic for people who aren't movie producers with a cell phone in the trunk of their car? The answer is yes, this is realistic for everyone. And I have seen the price of stem cells drop from 5 years ago. you had to fly to some country somewhere and spend $100,000, and you got relatively weak stem cells. And it's to the point that depending on which practitioner you go to, you can spend about $5,000, which is a substantial amount of money. Compared to a knee replacement or a lifetime of pain or dying 20 years earlier from autoimmune disease, it is actually really affordable. And that's where it is now. So we've gone from $100,000 to $5,000. Where do you think this is going to be 10 years from now? This is going to be a first-line treatment, and especially in countries where the government helps to take care of people, where there's an incentive to keep medical costs down. How dare they slow stem cells down? This is one of the most important things that's happened for us to have control of our biology, to be able to regenerate ourselves, to be able to have the immune system and the repair systems of a young person. I'm 44 years old, about to turn 45, and I have more energy, I look better, and no pain. I'm way better now than I was when I was 25. Granted, I did weigh 300 pounds. I don't know how many stone that is, but it was a lot.
Yeah, we talk stone, but I think that must be about 20 stone or something.
It was 50% more than I weigh now.
Wow. Yeah, and it's interesting, this is a big conference, and I know that stem cells is one of the things that you're getting approached about a lot. It's one of the things that a lot of people are talking about as well. Did you have, how does it work? Did you have your own, your own blood injected into your face? Is that how it works?
Oh, that's called a vampire facelift, and I did that once too. That was a few years ago. And that's something called platelet-rich plasma, where they take your blood out, they spin it. In order to get your own stem cells, they go to one of two places. They go to fat deposits in the body, usually from the lower back, and they take out about a coffee cup's worth of fat, and they spin it in a machine to get the stem cells out. And then they can take those stem cells, and they can inject them anywhere you've ever been injured. So anywhere I've had chronic pain or injuries, sites of surgeries on my knee, all of those I've had my stem cells injected. And they can do them intravenously. The other place they can get them is from your bone marrow. And there's all sorts of people say, oh, it's the most painful thing ever. It's uncomfortable, but it's nowhere near the most painful thing ever. You're usually on some sort of a sedative, so you sort of lay there and you feel some stuff. But then they get this precious stuff that your body makes, but it reserves. And then when they put it into your blood, it goes to anywhere in your body that has inflammation, and it fixes it.
Really?
Yeah, so I did a Facebook Live of me getting my stem cells extracted. If it's that painful, you couldn't do that. I just had to make sure I didn't hold the camera so they could see my butt. Because,
Didn't you have them inserted into your penis as well?
I had stem cells. I'm a professional biohacker, and I'm willing to try everything before I talk about it. So I said, look, I want stem cells everywhere they can go. So yeah, they put them in my face, my hair. They did them intravenously. I'm the second person to have my stem cells injected into my brain, prophylactically.
Into your brain?
Yeah. So they do it in the cerebral spinal fluid, so you can get them right there. And it works. Like, this is real. And yes, I had them injected in my penis and pretty much everywhere that's possible. And you want to be younger. You want to be younger everywhere. A lot of people ask, why would you want to live to 180? Because the vision of being old is that you're going to be infirm, you're going to have Alzheimer's disease, you'll have paper-thin skin, and you just won't like your life. And that is not my goal. My goal is to, when I'm 180, to look about like I do now. And I have no idea if I'm going to be able to look like this when I'm that old or not. But I'm absolutely willing to work to live to 180 and to die trying, because we're all going to die anyway. I just want to feel amazing until it happens, and I sure hope it happens in a very long time from now. And why wouldn't we make the small changes in our lives, in our environments now, to prevent the damage, so that even if we die at a normal age, that we have an amazing life until then? That's the worst case with what I'm doing. And the best case is I'm going to break some records. I'm okay with either one.
Well, that's the important thing, isn't it? The quality of life.
Yeah.
Actually, whether you're 40, 50, 60, or whatever, as long as you're feeling good, that really is the most important thing.
Yeah, feeling good and having a working brain. And all of us are afraid of that. And what happens in the research from Headstrong, half of people under age 40 have what's called early onset mitochondrial dysfunction. Big words. What that means is that the power plants in your cells, the things that make the energy that gives you your willpower, that gives you your zest for life, well, they aren't making as much energy as they're supposed to. So half of people under 40 are old, and everyone over 40 has mitochondrial dysfunction. They just call it aging. It is not necessary. We know about the system now, and you can hack it. And that's why I wrote my last book. And that's the stuff I've been doing to make myself look the way I look now.
So last time we hung out, it was at the 40 Years of Zen house outside Seattle, and we had a couple of dinners, and I remember thinking, at that point I was kind of on a bulletproof-ish diet, but I remember noticing how rigorous you are about sticking to the diet that you stick to. And since then, I've gone a lot more low-carb. I felt great, actually. I've been keto for about 4 months.
Wow.
Still following bulletproof principles, and the first month and a half was quite hard, but it's got a lot better since. I was putting a lot of salt in water, which seemed to help, but felt pretty tired at times. Now, feeling awesome. Would you say, looking kind of back to the future, is a low-carb diet one of those things that you think is going to be adopted by a lot of people in the future?
There are two forces at work here. One of them is big food, this industrial food production. You make the most money selling people food that costs as little as possible and tastes good. And that's been the recipe forever. And when I look at making food for Bulletproof, like, what's the food going to do for you? And then how good does it taste? And then how convenient is it? And then how much does it cost? There's the core assumption that people are willing to pay to feel good. You'll spend a little bit more on food because you'll spend less on medicine later, and because you'll like your life. That is a predominantly low carb, but not necessarily keto diet. So there's a lot of, I'll call it keto extremism, where people are saying, I'm all sugar is evil. I'm never going to have a carb again. I did that. And I went for about 3 months in extreme ketosis, one serving of veggies a day. Mm-hmm. And I actually got new food allergies, and it ruined my sleep quality. And what I work to do with the Bulletproof diet is to teach people how to have metabolic flexibility. If you can't burn fat metabolically, you're not doing it right. If you can't handle carbs, you're not doing it right. If you eat all carbs all the time, you're probably doing it wrong. And if you eat only fat all the time, you're probably doing it wrong. If you eat only protein all the time. So you got to teach your body to be flexible. But if you choose the lowest quality inflammatory proteins, or you choose to eat high fructose corn syrup and junk food and grains and all that stuff, then you're doing it wrong when you're eating carbs. And the biggest mistake that people are making right now is they're eating deep fried foods with seed oils and things like that, because damaged fats mess you up. Your cells, every cell in your body, the membrane of the cell is actually made out of tiny drops of fat. And if you eat damaged fat, you get damaged cells. Damaged cells can't make energy, and you look old, you feel old, and your brain works like you're old. This is what happened to me when I was in my early 20s, and I had massive brain fog, and I was overweight, and my joints hurt all the time, and all these things. Bad fats are a big part of this. So it comes down to metabolic flexibility, and when you are metabolically flexible, eating the right stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned that obsessiveness. I think I've certainly got those tendencies, addictive tendencies actually. I wonder if people who have compulsive tendencies are quite drawn to things like biohacking. I know for me, it's important to kind of do what matters to me, but not to be too obsessive about it. And I think when you have had health problems, you can be quite obsessive, can't you?
Well, there's a condition called orthorexia, which is an eating disorder like anorexia. And it says, I can't eat anything unless it's perfect. And a lot of us have anxiety. And for me, there was a time when I was learning how to eat foods that were biologically compatible with my body, the stuff that makes me feel good. And I had spent so many years feeling just like crap that I was afraid of going back to, I don't want to have another week of brain fog. I like how I'm feeling right now. So you do develop this kind of fear response. But when you do the personal development work, you do meditation, heart rate variability, the other parts of biohacking that are in my books, that are at the conference here today, those are the things that allow you to be calm about it. So I'm willing to look at a meal and say, what's that meal going to do to me? And am I going to enjoy it? Is it perfect? No. Does it have stuff in it that I know is going to cause joint pain for me for a week? If it does, I'm just not going to eat it. I'm happy to fast. A lot of people listening right now, they have a fundamental belief that if I don't eat, I'm going to die. It's not a rational belief, but it's in your tissues. Your body is programmed to not allow you to starve to death. So I have to eat, but that's actually not true. You won't die if you had no food for a month. You probably wouldn't like it, but you wouldn't die. So skipping a meal is fine. And for me to just be comfortable with that and say, I know I have enough energy. I know that I could skip meals for the next 2 days and I could still do what I'm doing on stage at this conference, and I'd still feel amazing. And eventually I'd be, it's really time for me to eat. That's what being metabolically flexible feels like. But if you have a fear around food, you've got to address the emotional side of this stuff. And this is not because you're a bad person. It's not a moral failing. It's not even you. It's an automatic system in your tissues that comes from ancient bacteria that are part of our system. That's how we make energy. They're the ones who are afraid. They're just giving that signal to you, and you're like, oh God, if I don't eat this, even though I know it's bad for me, that's a dysfunctional pattern. And when you understand it's not a moral failing, it's so much easier. And I used to think, I'm going to try and lose this weight, and I'd lose a stone. But then I gain 2 stones afterwards. This happens to everyone who's overweight, and you have these just unbearable cravings. Those are the things that happen when your metabolism is broken, but it makes us feel like we're failures. And that's not what's going on here. It's biological, and it's a separate system designed to hack your conscious thinking, to force you to eat these carbs or to eat these bad fats or just to eat even if you don't really need to eat.
I've certainly noticed the cravings go.
Yeah. They're gone now, right?
Yeah. To the extent, actually, I still want to eat, but if I do miss a meal, I often feel better afterwards.
And the idea is you stop obsessing about food. I think the average person spends a third of their subconscious thinking about what am I going to eat next? Should I eat that? What's for lunch? I don't have that anymore. And in fact, someone will set a bagel or a croissant or cookies, I guess we call them chips, whatever, in front of me.
Chips? That's we'd call that crisps.
Crisps, thank you.
I've been getting blank looks all over California. Can I have some crisps? And they just laugh.
There you go. I'm working on my multilingualism.
Yeah.
And to just not have the voice in my head that says, eat that. Most of us, you get a craving, I should eat that. And you go, okay, I'm not going to, I'm a good person. That's just gone. And turning the voice off by eating the right foods, by having a metabolism that works, it changes everything.
Let's look at a couple of hacks then. If there's someone listening to this or reading this that is in the middle of their life, has smoked all their lives, has not lived a healthy life, probably actually aren't listening to Zestology in the first place, but they might be. What would be a kind of a good starting point, and is it even worth it if they've been smoking for 30 years?
All right. People who have been smoking are going to absolutely love what I'm going to tell them. Number 1, nicotine is not bad for you. Number 2, smoking will kill you. So there you go. You got the good and the bad. It turns out that there's a reason people gain a stone when they quit smoking, because nicotine is one of the most studied smart drugs, and it causes this energy production system in your body to become more effective the same way that exercise does. This operates through a system called PGC1 alpha. You don't have to remember that, but understand, quit your smoking and start using another form of nicotine. They have patches, they have sprays, they have lozenges. Just switch. You'll find that you feel the same way you do as when you smoke, but now you don't smell bad, and you don't have all this burning stuff in your lungs, which is what triggers cancer and things like that. So there you go. There's one quick hack. Right? So don't fear the nicotine, fear the smoke. The second thing I would tell you is that if you get off the fried stuff, get off the grains, and start eating some more vegetables, and most importantly, more undamaged natural fats. Canola oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil, those are not natural fats. You can't even get those without pouring solvents through stuff that we wouldn't really eat. Canola oil is actually called rapeseed oil. They rebranded it to make it sound more attractive. And if you feed it to animals, they get sick. Like, it's just not food. It's an industrial chemical. It makes good paint, but it's cheap. So what you want to do is you want to eat things like grass-fed butter. Unfortunately, there's an abundance of that in Europe. We have Ireland, we have UK. There's all kinds of nice grass there. And if you do that and you eat olive oil, the real stuff, not the cheap stuff that's usually not really olive oil that's misbranded. And when you eat things like that and you don't fry in them, you actually add them to your food after you cook it, your food will taste better. But you'll wake up and go, why am I not puffy? Why do I not have these love handles? Why don't I not have muffin top? And why does my brain feel this way? It's because you ate more good fat. So less bad fat, more good fat. That's a huge hack. It'll turn down your cravings. And if you're going to have carbs, don't eat high fructose corn syrup and processed foods. Eat some ice cream made with real sugar.
It's better than nothing.
Exactly.
And then, okay, so that's the kind of beginner level hacks. Let's go straight through intermediate to the advanced stuff.
All right.
The back to the future stuff. What is it that you're most excited about that's kind of developing in the medium term, the next 10 years or so, that perhaps we could all use? Maybe it might cost $5,000 like the stem cells, or it might be available even cheaper.
Well, there's a couple things happening here. One is that the realization that we're not robots has finally come through, and that we have biochemical, unique things. So if I sit down and I say, this vegetable is good for you, there is absolutely no evidence of that. It may be good for you because it has these positive effects, and it may be bad for you because it has these negative effects. And your genetic makeup determines whether that food is good for you or not. And there's 2 different kinds of genetics mixed there. And the Bulletproof Diet accounts for 4 major classes of food defense systems. It turns out plants don't want you to eat them or their babies, so they evolved to keep animals from eating them. So stuff that my wife can eat, I don't eat it. And stuff that I eat, she might not eat. And there's a big overlap, fortunately, and there is for all of us. But it's totally okay to just realize, you know what, that food that tastes good, that just will never work for me.
And how do you find that out?
Well, there are food allergy panels, and some of this, though, isn't allergies. What you do is you actually just don't eat these classes of foods for a little while, and that's built into the Bulletproof Diet. It's, look, for 2 weeks, just eat a relatively small range of foods that don't cause problems for almost anyone. And if suddenly you feel young again, like, all right, now I know that some of these suspect foods are guilty, then you go through and I'll try this one. And if you wake up with joint pain the next day or with brain fog, I guess I never knew that. People listening wouldn't expect. Probably a third of people who are listening are sensitive to something called nightshade vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers.
Oh yeah, I cut them out a while back. Yeah.
You know, I did too. And I found out that I grew up eating the spicy peppers from New Mexico, where I grew up. If I eat 1 bite of cayenne pepper, I will have this pain I've had in my upper back my entire life. It comes back, but I have no pain. But for someone listening to this right now, the odds are that compound is actually really good for you. It's because we're different. And now that we've recognized that, a huge amount of machine learning and a huge amount of data is coming down that's going to let us know. And it'll be to the point that, look, these are the foods that work for me. And it's not that they're good or bad. We can stop being tribal. We can stop judging people for eating something or not. You've got to know what works for you. Because if you're eating the wrong stuff, you will die sooner and you won't like your life.
I mean, I know you mentioned in your talk yesterday the company Viome, who are here.
Yes.
And they are kind of helping with that, aren't they? That seems quite a futuristic idea.
What Viome is doing, and I'm on their advisory board, and I've worked with them since the very early days. Just so like people understand. And Viome is started by a guy who's mining the moon for minerals right now, like one of those very big thinkers. And the idea is they get information when you fill out surveys about your life, about your health conditions, and they get more information about what's going on in your gut than has ever been gathered by any test anywhere. And they get this from hundreds of thousands of people, run it through machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence, so that they can come back and say, you know what, here's the patterns we never knew about in people. So this is what's coming on that front. And that's a test that's a few $100s. Like it's
and
reasonable.
then they say, don't eat broccoli, do eat cauliflower, that kind of thing as well.
Probably not that exact combination, but they could.
Yeah.
Right. And that is profound, and we'll see a lot more coming down the pipes. But more importantly is the societal recognition that just because this is soul food, this is a traditional food, it doesn't mean it's good for you. It doesn't mean that the food is good or bad, or the person who made it is good or bad. It simply means that, like, it's kind of shocking, you wouldn't try and charge an iPhone with a cable for an Android phone. That's what this comes down to. You have to have the right fuel. And that's one thing that has me really excited. The other one is that we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's this anxiety response we have. In Headstrong, I identified 3 bacterial behaviors, given that our power systems are based on ancient bacteria, that roll up into our consciousness. And one is that we're programmed to run away from, kill, or hide from scary things. And we do that very quickly before we can think about them, because that keeps tigers from eating us. Like, it's a good system. And we have this eat everything so we don't starve, and we have reproduce at all costs. Those are wired into being human. Now, we can address the eat everything with the stuff we just talked about, but that fear response is something that we're now recognizing, and it is hackable. And over the next 10 years, instead of people doing the meditation that does work and has been studied for thousands of years to get on top of this problem, we are now finally at the point where we can have signal analysis, and we can look at what's going on in there, and then we can train the body to obey our wishes. And this is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head. It's something you mentioned earlier, this 40 years of Zen stuff. We're doing the same thing there. We're getting brainwaves from advanced meditators, from people who build billion-dollar companies, people who have unusual high-performance states, looking for commonalities, running it through machine learning, and making it teachable. So instead of sitting there on a meditation cushion and hoping that you're doing it right, to actually have guidance so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation in a very small period of time. This is happening right now so that we can get the signal into our body that says, hey, what if you could shed all the useless patterns that drive your behaviors, all the things you do that make you ashamed later that you didn't want to do but you did anyway?
And would that be like something you listen to or something you watch?
It's a combination of neural enhancing technologies. One of them definitely is neurofeedback. We get the electrical signal off your brain. But in that same program, we're using pulsed electromagnets on the brain that you can see the results on an EEG, like they actually change the way your cells fire.
I took that. Is that when your vision goes like all wobbly?
Yes. And that was actually from an electrical stem across the brain.
Okay.
The Russians pioneered this for their space program 40 years ago. This isn't new tech, but no one knows about it. And we're learning more about how it works. When you do those things in combination with turning on your power production all the way through your body, like, wow, now I have the energy to do what would have been 40 years of therapy without a lot of results, to suddenly say, wow, I actually walk around without anxiety. And when we do that, this will absolutely change what it means to be a human. Because we are wired, after we run away from scary things, after we have enough food, and after we're assured the species will reproduce, the next behavior that we have wired into our meat is actually to form communities and make friends. I fundamentally believe that we are built and wired to be kind to each other, but that system will not turn on if the other three are getting triggered all the time. So when people walk around hungry all the time, they walk around inflamed all the time, they walk around with unconscious fear about random stuff that doesn't make any sense, and when they walk around feeling like there's no love in their life, they won't be supportive, they won't build communities, they won't be nice to each other. We are hacking that right now. This will change.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis that gives you energy instantly? I know you're a big fan of cryotherapy, and you're obviously wearing the glasses at the moment.
Well, I do everything I can, everything I know of that gives me energy. So cryotherapy is a 3-minute thing, but it's relatively inconvenient because you have to find liquid nitrogen and a facility. We just opened one in Santa Monica so people can do this. Every day when I'm indoors under fluorescent or LED lighting, I wear the True Dark glasses, and before I go to bed, I've been able to double my deep sleep with that. I use the Bulletproof sleep supplement, so sleeping better really, really works effectively. But I also look at what's going to give me energy quickly, and this always comes down to hacking the systems in the body that make energy. And I may sound a little bit broken here, but Bulletproof coffee, which has become 100 million cups of Bulletproof coffee last year, it's not because of marketing. It's because people try it, and 10 minutes later, it's like, I like the way my brain feels. What's happening is the brain octane oil, and in Europe it's called high octane oil. It actually can go in and help your body get these fat-burning molecules so your brain can eat carbs or fat at the same time. And then you're like, wow, I feel great. That makes a huge difference. So that's something I do every day. And then I take other mitochondrial enhancers, stuff that we created at Bulletproof. And when I do those on an airplane or when I'm really tired, I turn my brain back on. But they're not stimulants. They're just basically they're turning on the ability for my cells to do what they were built to do in the first place.
Couple of specific ones you'd want to mention which you think are the real future of supplements?
There's Keto Prime, which is a molecule that's required for you to take new food into the body and turn it into energy. So that's one that's particularly powerful for me. And
I took that for the first time with you when we did our last interview.
And you felt that, right?
Yeah, and like halfway through I was like, I feel a little different to normal.
Yeah, but it's
I told you,
but not stimulating.
Oh no, it
right?
felt good. Yeah,
and all this is now your cells are making energy the way a young person's do. We want this.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that. I'll do Unfair Advantage. And there's all kinds of stuff coming down with light therapy, with actually turning natural lighting systems indoors. Now that we know light's a drug, when you get some actual sunlight in the morning, which is hard in parts of Europe or in Canada where I live, well, we might actually do what I do in the offices for Bulletproof, where you control the temperature and color of the light based on time of day, because you don't necessarily care what kind of light you're seeing, but your body is looking at the light to figure out what to do right now. And if you give it junk light, you won't get the results you want from your diet. When we recognize this, we will change the way we light our buildings so that it's compatible with our tissues.
Yeah, that's awesome. I often think that when I go into my TV job and the lighting, it's because it's a TV studio.
Rough.
The whole office is a studio, and it's just, even at midnight, it's mad bright. But it's not the same as daylight. bright. It's just really intense.
It's got 5 times more blue light than daylight, and that's the one spectrum of light that causes the most harm to your sleep systems. I went through my own studio for Bulletproof Radio. I got rid of the LED lighting panels, and I went back to the halogen xenon lights that they used for years in TV. I can go all day on interviews without getting tired. Before, after 3 hours, I'm like, man, my eyes are just twitching here. Like, I really don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So it's helped, and
That's
maybe
awesome.
we'll even get that fixed in TV.
Well, yeah, sometimes I work until midnight on Sky.
Wow.
I can't possibly wear blue blocking glasses while I'm doing that either.
Everyone would remember you if you did.
They did, that's true. That'd be my USP. So very quickly, what is one book you'd recommend? I have asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again. And one tip for living with energy, vitality and motivation of everything you've talked about, perhaps something forward, kind of looking forward thinking in terms of the future.
Wow, so one book I'd recommend right now.
It can be your own if you want. I know you brought one out recently.
I mean, it's kind of self-serving to say that. So I will plug Headstrong because it hit the New York Times best-selling list of science
congratulations.
books.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Advice books is a category that a lot of authors get there. It was one of the biggest honors I've ever had in my career to make the monthly science bestseller list with some very famous books like Sapiens and Homo Deus and books like that. And speaking of books that I would recommend for people is a book that was one above my book on the New York Times Science list, and it's called Homo Deus. And this book is about how we've used technology, how we became the humans we are today, and where we're going. Because we are reaching a time of exponential change in what it means to be human. We have systems coming online right now that can do a lot of things that we used to have to do, the drudgery of life. And our history for the past thousands of years has been, how do we waste less time? People would never think of this, but baking powder, this simple stuff you use to bake more quickly, changed the world. And there were whole trade wars about this going back about 100 years because it freed women from having to spend a couple hours making bread. And we are on this continuous path to stop doing stuff that doesn't have a high return for the world. And Homo Deus is a book that can tell you where we're going, and I think that's a really worthwhile read.
And then what was the tip for living with energy, vitality, and a motivated, purposeful life?
This is the free biohack, and it's one that I open and close the conference with. It's something that I do with my children every night when I tuck them down for bed. And it's something that we actually do as part of 40 Years of Zen. Like, it's built into my life. And it's simple. It's called gratitude. And what you do is, usually before bed, because you'll sleep better, but you can do it in the morning if it's helpful, sometimes twice a day, write down or tell someone 3 things you're grateful for. So you can tell yourself this story: this is the worst day of my entire life. And I will tell you right now, that's not true because you're still alive. Okay? So the story you're telling yourself isn't right. And when you write down these things you're grateful for, it changes your nervous system. And when you change your nervous system at that level, it changes the power production systems in your body. And you stop looking at threats and you start realizing, wow, even if I had a hard day today, I live in a time of incredible abundance where I have at my fingertips more resources, more food, more knowledge, more information, more control than a king had 250 years ago. It's literally at that level. So we live in an incredible time. And if you can find gratitude for the smallest thing in your life, your nervous system and your brain will change. So that's my tip. Be grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I have plenty of gratitude for you and this conference and all the free coffee. I've probably been drinking a little bit too much of it.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A really great interview as always, and a really great weekend as well. So thank you.
It's always fun to meet. Thank you.
Yeah. That is it for this podcast of Zestology. Thank you so much to Dave Asprey and for Balance Magazine, the wonderful Balance Magazine, for helping make it happen. Make sure you check out Balance Magazine if you're in London and my article on this. Or, of course, you can go to balance.media and read it there. And as the evening draws in Pasadena, it's about 6:30 in the evening. It is a beautiful temperature. Just warms the bones. It's so nice as the sun goes down over the mountains in the distance. I'm feeling really very grateful, because Dave did mention gratitude, I might as well say it. I'm feeling very grateful that I've been able to come to this conference, not only soak up all the great speakers, but also speak to Dave Asprey. Now, if you enjoyed that, I've recorded another one today, which will be coming out soon, another interview with someone who is probably the best known relationship expert in the world right now, Esther Perel. If you haven't seen her 2 TED Talks or read her 2 books, they are epic. And I would say required reading and watching for anyone in a relationship or who wants to be in a relationship. So pretty much everybody. I've interviewed her as well, so a lot more gratitude for that. And that's coming on a future episode of Zestology. As for me, well, I'm going to carry on enjoying the Bulletproof Conference now. Been here for a couple of days, got another day tomorrow. We've got an on-site community mixer tonight, which means a little bit of natural wine and a little bit of hanging out with some friends. As always, thank you for listening to Zestology. If you are a Dave Asprey fan after having listened to this podcast, there are 2 or 3 previous podcasts, including the one that you'll have heard us talking about it. We recorded at 40 Years of Zen in the mysterious mountainside retreat outside Seattle. Really cool place and a really cool experience. So you can go and find that one. It was January 2017 if you want to listen to that one. That's it. Thank you for listening. See you next time.